Welcome to the Breakfast Leadership Show, a top 2% global podcast and one of California's top leadership shows. Each episode brings you real-world insights on burnout prevention, workplace culture, and leadership excellence. And now, here's your host, Michael D. Levin.
Welcome back. I've got Stephen Dwyer on the line. Stephen, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Michael? Good to be with you.
Great to be with you as well. I'm really looking forward to this conversation because you do some amazing work and you lead a great organization. So why don't you share a little bit about yourself?
Well, myself, I had an unconventional, if you will, background in terms of where I am present day. I grew up, always wanted to be a lawyer, and I went to law school, and that's what I did. I became a lawyer, and I was the chief legal officer for ASA for 12 years, and I had been with ASA for another 10 years or so before that. Until I thought, and it was a wonderful job, loved it, loved every minute of it. But it dawned on me that I thought that I can contribute and help the organization, the American Staffing Association, in broader ways, more strategic ways than just from a legal perspective. So I started letting the board of directors know that. I started learning about all of the business units. And then when talks really got serious about me assuming the president and CEO role, it was interesting, Michael. I had to do a lot of soul searching. And I think this is really an important point for anyone thinking about career transition or a new job or whatnot. You know, I was a lawyer by training and therefore pretty analytical, looking at issues, making decisions. But I recognized that in order to take on this leadership role the way I wanted to do it, I needed to make sure that I was doing it for the right reasons. In other words, when people ask me now what I do, I say I invest in the success of others, which is my employees. But I had to make sure that's really what I wanted to do. And my advice for people in any leadership role is that's what it comes down to. So make sure that's what you want to do, and make sure that's what you enjoy. And I love it.
I can tell. And congratulations on the appointment as well. You know, it's, from somebody that's like, yeah, I'm going to practice law and I'm going to do the lawyer work. And, the ASA obviously has been, a great organization for quite a long time. So you picked a good organization, then all of a sudden here's this, opportunity that comes up. And say all of a sudden, it builds up over time, of course. But you ask the right questions of yourself. And I think a lot of times people will say, "Ooh, yeah," they look at the title. Like, "Oh yeah, that would be good. That'll look good on the resume." But there's more to it than that. If that's the only thing you're looking at, that's not a good enough reason. And I tell people that all the time. Yes, it's a great title. Don't get me wrong, but you have to be in it, because in order to have that title, you need to live it and breathe it and have it be a part of it, and make it your own. Because, I know in the situation with ASA, a lot of times whenever there's a recent appointment, or, you're taking over for somebody else that's been there for some time, there's that initial bridge period where, the board or whoever you report to, it's like, okay, now we have a new leader. Which direction are they going to go in? Is it going to be the same? Is it going to be dramatically different? And usually it's not dramatically different, but everybody feels like it's going to be like this 180 type of thing. And very rarely do you see that in organizations, even ones that are struggling and they bring somebody in to turn things around. They don't just throw everything out. They have to kind of get a lay of the land. And obviously, with the time that you had there in your role prior to taking over, you definitely had some insights to the organization, which I'm sure proved pretty helpful.
I think that's right. I think you make an excellent point, Michael. I had seen things from the inside perspective for many years, and therefore I shared with the board along the way when they were considering me for this position and talking with me the things that I thought needed to change in my vision for the organization. And, I'll share with you and your audience an interesting thing. Over the course of this year, it was actually a challenging time for me. I had a health issue, a significant one, and I don't mind sharing. I had a double lung transplant. Big deal. And so I spent a significant time in the hospital waiting to see if there would be a donor. And during that time in the hospital, did a lot of soul searching. And I was very fortunate in that regard. I was fortunate to receive lungs from a donor, but two, to have the time to do some further introspection about, is this what I want to do with my life? And is this where I want to do it?
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that I wasn't the only one that was feeling that, because I mentioned that to other people that had not, been through anything like what I did, and they're like, "How could you be calm?" I was like, "'Cause I chose to, and it was really easy for me to be calm because being frantic and scared, not saying that I wasn't, have some fear involved, but it was I found it a lot more clear for me to just be relaxed, and too bad I should have been relaxed before, then maybe I wouldn't have had the cardiac event, but that's another story for another day. So I want to segue a little bit, and obviously, the great. I'd be amiss to not talk about the kind of the current elephant in the room with the advent of seeing AI implemented in the workforce and all that. And I know that these are the early days, and you and I both remember that the dot-com era and what an absolute circus that was for trying to find tech people and hiring IT people from all over the world, because there just wasn't enough IT people in the States to do all the things that we wanted to do. And then reality kicked in and things started to sort themselves out. And we saw a lot of companies go under, and there was an alignment of things. And I anticipate we're going to see the same thing with AI, but you guys, obviously get insights to what, organizations are doing and thinking and asking. So, what are some of the things that you're seeing from your vantage point that could give organizations some insights on where you think things might go over the next few months? I don't say the next 5 years. I, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 10 minutes, much less the next 5 years anymore. But curious to your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think you're very wise in what you just said in saying, I don't know what's going to happen in the next, years or 5 months, because here's my belief. And notice it's a belief. I don't know. And I think anybody who tells you they know, they're sorely mistaken and will be disappointed. Here's my belief. My belief is that we are looking at the most profound technological revolution in our lifetimes and perhaps in the history of the world, period. It is such a powerful, profoundly impactful tool that I can't sit here, Michael, and say, I have the slightest idea, like you just said, how in several years this will change the world of work. Clearly we're automating tasks now. Clearly, and it's not just AI, we are seeing companies that, in addition to using artificial intelligence, are using robotics. So, for example, some staffing agencies have seized upon that as an opportunity, knowing that their clients in the light industrial space, manufacturing, construction, and others do, unlike other industries perhaps, widespread layoffs because of the adoption of AI. What has been said, and I do think it's true, is that it has freed up employees to do so-called higher level work. And that's the goal, because then they're more productive and more fulfilled. So that's what we're seeing right now as a snapshot.
And it makes sense too, because the argument that I hear, and I do a lot of work in burnout prevention and recovery and workplace culture, the things that I hear in the conversations that I have with organizations and team members is there's a lot of things that they want to do, but they can't because they're bogged down with so many other things. And it kind of goes back to even, the Great Recession. And I know a lot of organizations, did a ton of layoffs during that time. And the people that were fortunate enough to keep their jobs, well, they had to do the work of their colleagues that are no longer with. And many organizations, figured out, okay, we're getting, the output that we need. Maybe we don't need to bring back the same number of people. So the workloads that we see in many cases has increased a bit. And even with technology, even before AI, the tech has been advancing, but the workloads have been increasing as well, which I tell people, it's like, yeah, I've got so much work to do. And I said, yeah, I tell people, that's a good thing, right? And they kind of look at me like, what do you mean? It's like, it means you are likely going to retain your job because you've got plenty to do. But I know there's this, and I agree with you 100% on the, letting AI deal with the automation of certain things that can be done by AI easily right now and allow, the human side of things to be more creative and come up with that deeper level work and the growth work where people feel inspired, like I finally get to do this. Because when you take off those handcuffs that a lot of people are wearing, virtual, of course, or, not real, it frees them up. And all of a sudden, that's when creativity happens. And that's when you start seeing innovation and business growth and all of that. And we know, and we see it, those companies that thrive and continue to expand and grow, innovation is part of their DNA. They're constantly looking for something different. They're not just saying, "Yep, we make this stuff and we've made this stuff and it's going to be this way and we've been around since 1987 but we haven't changed anything." It's like, are you going to see the 40th anniversary? Maybe you're going to see the 50th. I don't know. So it definitely gives opportunities to people and organizations to not only, and this is from a staffing standpoint too, not only say, okay, we have the automation of the tasks that we used to have a lot of people do. We free this up. Now we have the capital that maybe we can bring on some additional people to go after those projects and things that we've been wanting to do, but we haven't been able to because we've been paying people to do this other stuff. So it actually can innovate growth in hiring of more people. And I think that's a conversation that a lot of people aren't thinking about, but I'm sensing is happening. It's even in these early days.
I think it's an excellent point. And here's for your listeners something that we are undertaking just the beginning of at the beginning stage. And I think, I hope, and expect it will be very useful for our organization because I know other organizations have used this approach. Before running headlong into AI, or maybe in conjunction with running headlong into AI, I would suggest that leaders stop and ask employees two questions. One question is, what friction do you encounter during your day? What frustrates you on a day-to-day basis? What makes your job harder? And at first they may say, well, I don't know, but once you get into a deep conversation and really elicit their day-to-day, well, walk me through what you do day-to-day. Some things will quickly stand out, I believe, in terms of friction. And I suspect that a lot of that friction can be addressed through AI. Once that friction is removed or lessened, perhaps, then to your point, you have happier employees, more motivated employees. They can spend their time on what really matters as opposed to what just has to get done. They're not dealing with the friction. So that's question number one. Then I would suggest that leaders ask their employees the second question. What friction are our clients suffering from when they deal with us and our product and our service? Now, you can certainly ask the employee also, how would we address that friction? But at the very least, they should be telling you their opinion about the friction that the clients are encountering. And again, I suspect AI can deal with that or help deal with it. So those are two disciplined approaches, I think, to starting to incorporate and get higher level work out of your people and therefore more employee satisfaction.
And I love that because when you ask an employee, what are the customers telling you? And not just a, transactional type of question, but, deeply wanting to understand. Okay, what are you seeing? Because from a leader standpoint, and this, we see things at this level differently than the people that are on the front lines and engaging with the customers every day. What are they seeing? And I love the friction question. That is an amazing question because, I've talked to people, on the show, recently quite a bit about AI and implementation and whatnot. And a theme that I keep coming up against or actually for is you mentioned this a moment ago. You jump in, 2 feet into AI. It's like, well, before you do that, you probably should understand the processes and the workflows of your organization. Otherwise, you're just going to automate silos and workflow bottlenecks and things like that. You take a little bit of time and actually get a better understanding of how your organization is running because if you have those conversations with people, you may find there's some opportunities without using AI to streamline some things and make it a little bit easier and more efficient for your customers and your internal staff to improve things. And then that way, when you do implement AI, you're starting from a cleaner plate. And I think that helps. And I mean, believe me, I know everybody thinks, oh, we're behind in AI. We all are. Don't worry about it. These are thinking pioneer days. The wagon hasn't even left the yard yet. I mean, it feels like it has, but no, we're still in the very early days. But I'm excited for the opportunities because my hope is that, like you've shared, that it's going to improve, the, just the productivity and the happiness of employees. And happy employees are productive. And boy, oh boy, if that happens, then they make better products and services, which you and I benefit from.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And I would be remiss to share one last thought I have about AI. So many of us are focused on automating tasks and increasing efficiencies, and rightly so. We should be thinking about that and how AI can increase efficiency. I'm not sure, perhaps it is, enough thought is being given to how AI can help redefine or impact, perhaps, our long-term vision of our respective companies and organizations. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about, and it's particular to the American Staffing Association. In talking about the how, how we want to be fueling our members' growth, staffing agency growth. Well, we had been talking about the how was by being the epicenter of information to help fuel staffing agency growth. And then we reconsidered with a lot of input from various people, very smart people. Well, have you thought about the impact of AI on that how? Because information through AI is going to be ubiquitous. You can access any information. But where AI isn't right now, at least in the short term, and what ASA can and does and should continue to offer is knowledge, expertise, and insight to help our members grow. There's a difference between just information and knowledge, insight, and expertise. And I thought that was wonderful input. So we've adopted that. And that was taking into account what AI is doing now and what it might be doing in the short term and refocusing us on how we add value to our members, our staffing agency members.
That's an amazing way to use the tool for sure. So, Stephen, I love this conversation. I said I could probably talk to you for 6 or 7 hours on this stuff, but I really appreciate your time today. Where can people find out more about you and all the amazing work that's being done at ASA?
AmericanStaffing.net. And Michael, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Breakfast Leadership Show. If you're dealing with a toxic workplace or feeling stuck in a challenging job, You don't have to go through it alone. Join our Dealing with Toxic Workplace community today at community.breakfastleadership.com and learn practical ways to protect your peace, rebuild confidence, and lead with strength. See you inside the community.